Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present.
Excellent. With that, if willing and able, would you please rise to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With that, our first item tonight, it looks like Danielle might have some feedback. There we go. Our first item tonight on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for October 2nd?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from council, from the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Madam Clerk, do we have any agenda revisions tonight?
I have no agenda revisions.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to special presentations tonight, and I'm very honored to be able to provide a swearing-in ceremony for Officer Buna. So typically we like to have these swearing-in ceremonies at the Public Safety Center during the daytime because it's easier for family to attend. But as I understand, Officer Buna is single. Is that correct, ma'am? So she decided it'd be best to have our ceremony here tonight. And we have Officer Marcotte as well as the handler. And so have you been a handler before, or is this your first experience?
This is the first time.
Excellent. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about Buna before we swear her in?
Buna, she's a Belgian Malinois Dutch Shepherd mix, approximately 2 years old. And we just completed the training for her, just like the basic handler's course, just 10 days ago now. We're kind of figuring some things out together. So
Excellent.
the one thing I will say is her obedience is the last thing we worked on. So that's where we're going to be working on that and improving that along the way.
Excellent. Well, this will be the first time I've sworn in an animal, so I don't know if she's supposed to repeat after me or bark after me, but we'll give it a try. So if you could raise your right paw. Is he trained for that yet?
No.
Not yet. Okay. So I, Buna, woof, do solemnly swear that I will support and comply with the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution and laws of the state of Iowa, the charter laws and ordinances of the city of Cedar Falls, and the rules and regulations of a canine officer for the Cedar Falls Public Safety Department, the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of my position as a canine officer to the best of my ability. Sworn to me this day of October 2023, Mayor Robert M. Green. And so, ma'am, welcome to the force. Do I?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the team.
She gives hugs.
Okay. Oh, that's a nice girl. So she is both a, was it apprehension? Is that the term? Correct term? And an identification dog as well. So kind of a dual role that she plays.
Yes.
And we'll be working both for the Cedar Falls Police Department and then on loan as needed to the Waterloo Police and other agencies that might need her special services.
Yes.
So any final parting words for us for tonight?
No, like you said, using her, assisting other agencies, that is kind of the goal of this program. Is we've utilized Blackhawk County, Waterloo. Just the other night, we helped Waterloo when there wasn't a canine in their city. It was nice to be able to work with another agency, so that's a big part of this program.
Excellent. And canine units are a very important part of the identity of a department. And so it's extremely important for her to be sworn in. We need to have her badged as well. So do we have a badger tonight? Come on up. Excellent. Round of applause. A quiet round of applause. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yep, definitely. Thank you.
Bye, Buna.
Wait.
Scare the bad guys, I think.
Got energy.
It's pretty.
With that, taking out of special presentations, we now move into public forum, where speakers will have one opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on topics relevant to city business. Is there a member of the public who wishes to speak in public comment or public forum tonight? Yes, please. Eden, Mr. Sharp, just provide name and city for the record, please.
Just move it over here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Gotcha. Rick Sharp, Pleasantville. How you doing? Got a question. Basically, I think you guys have all read the news about the fiasco that we call Sturgis Falls and their board and committee. I'm asking the current mayor and council, as well as the new mayor and council members, to not change the rule that you implemented, in 21, that eliminated the 15% surcharge. No need to change that. I'm also asking that the city seriously look into taking over the Sturgis Falls Committee as a board, make it part of the city structure of boards and commissions. Obviously, it's too big to have one or two people control it with no oversight and with their own rules. The recent actions taken by an individual has demonstrated that by threatening to eliminate all the activities or put them on hold, at Overman Park. So I think it'd be a lot better for the citizens to create that board and have board appointed members, just like you did with the bike committee for that. That way that'll also allow us more public input, transparency with the funding that's going on, and then we can figure out why 9 board members resigned. That should right there highlight a problem that's going on with that committee. Questions that we have: has Sturgis Falls paid back that loan from the city yet? Also, we'd like to know how much they still owe and how long do they have to pay off that current loan. Okay. I'd also like the city to strongly encourage, or actually just allow and go on your own for Overman Park, to let the craft vendors, again, if you're not following social media, you're kind of missing out on some stuff. The vendors for the craft show, they're kind of left in the dark. They want to know what's going on because they need to make plans too. They don't need Sturgis Falls funding to show up to be a vendor there. And I'd ask that we not leave them hanging out there. Also, I don't think the parade needs Sturgis Falls money, so we don't need to leave the parade hanging out there. I read in the comments that Mr. Stoddard asked that the city take over the funding for the Sturgis Overman Park activities. However, I'm looking at the donations over the last few years that Sturgis Falls likes to advertise. The city has donated, they're in the top tier of donations, $5,000 plus. CFU and the Cedar Falls Visitor and Tourism Bureau also each donate $2,500 plus. So using my math here, as a minimum of $10,000 per year, the city has donated towards Sturgis Falls. And magically enough, that's the amount of money that we need to have Overman Park. So I would ask you currently and the future mayor and council to not allow any more money, taxpayer money, to go towards that Overman Park. Instead, to allocate, to require, say, hey, we're donating money, we're just going to put it toward Overman Park activities there. Also, I saw in there that the city is doing, according to the contract, they're doing bookkeeping for Sturgis Falls. That was in their contract for a small fee. So are those records public record? I mean, I would ask that they would be, since you are using city people, city money, city time, all that stuff should be open to the public. That's pretty much all I have. Like I said, as follow along, the city should take control and run the show like it should be run, and not let one individual, two individuals kind of set the pace for the entire city. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. As an answer for that, the loan part and whether or not we're bookkeeping, Mr. Gaines, would you be able to provide? Oh, yes, Director Rodenbeck.
So they paid off their loan about a year ago, so they do not currently owe the city any funds anymore. In terms of the bookkeeping, I believe it was 2018 that the council approved a contract where we do provide bookkeeping services to Sturgis Falls for a fee, $1,500 a year. And those are not public record. We do not keep those books as part of city books. We actually have a separate financial system where those are all recorded, and as part of that agreement, they're not to become public record. And there's just one city staff person who works on those records.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers for public comment tonight? You see, oh, okay.
Would I speak now in regard to the College Hill Vision Plan, or?
There'll be, I recommend waiting to have the time for that, because then we can do it all in one like YouTube clip later. I'm very happy to have those comments. Good evening, Rev Blackwell. If you could provide just name and city for the record, please, sir.
Michael Blackwell, and I live in Cedar Falls. For a number of years, I facilitated diversity workshops on the UNI campus and in Cedar Falls and Waterloo. It was not a requirement of my job as Director for Multicultural Education, but it was an interest of mine. After about a dozen years of doing them, I became a bit disillusioned about them because only a few participants actually took it seriously and took the challenge to continue learning and attempting to improve race relations in their spheres of influence. I brought to campus and before the community dozens of national and internationally renowned speakers to address the American racial dilemma. When members of the audience told me they were moved by the speakers, I tried to capitalize on their excitement and encourage them to continue to explore the subject matter through book discussions, films, conferences, trips across the country, and other upcoming events, to little avail. There is a paucity of Black and Latinx professionals on campus and at community institutions when I came to Iowa in the fall of 1995. And for the next 28 years, scarce substantive change has occurred despite valiant efforts from anti-racist activists. When I left Missouri State University in the city of Springfield, I knew little about the Cedar Valley, and I was told things would be definitely better. I was so excited by the prospects. The first couple months were indeed a honeymoon. However, after that period, nightmares entered in with a vengeance that proved to resemble the racist injustices in Springfield. My hopefulness was short-lived, and for I already knew such a panacea did not exist anywhere in the United States. Recently, I was encouraged by the Cedar Falls Racial Equity Task Force's report of 2021 and the appointment of a diversity specialist recently. I will not make the same mistake, though, as I did when I relocated from Springfield to Cedar Falls. I realized that a lot of times it is challenging, for multifarious reasons, to convert thin paper ideas into thick action. In the late 1990s, I became a member of the board of the African American Historical and Cultural Museum. After learning about the history of Blacks in Iowa, I eventually became board president. We made efforts to present the history to others, but were unable to marshal enough resources to erect a building. The other day, I was complimented by a couple individuals for my efforts, but I could only graciously offer thanks, knowing my endeavors produce more sweat than positive results. I want to encourage the city of Cedar Falls not to dismiss or abandon efforts to improve race relations here. Also, I reiterate my suggestion to come together with Waterloo's governmental agencies to work unrelentingly to that end. With such genuine and diligent energy focused on such a noble enterprise, maybe, just maybe, we will markedly effectuate positive social change and thereby significantly improve the quality of life for all in the Cedar Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Blackwell.
At the risk of going to parliamentary jail before Reverend Blackwell leaves,
Can you please ask for permission to speak from the chair, Councilmember Schultz?
can I speak?
Please, yes.
Okay. So, Reverend, I'd like to thank you for your comments and commitment to continue to come forward with us. these aren't deaf ears that you're presenting to. We care, and we want to work with you, and we want to work with the Inclusion and Diversity Racial Task Force, and we want to make some real changes, and we want our city to be as welcoming as we can achieve, and again, appreciate your diligence for that. So with that, I look forward to working with you more in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll also note that the Racial Equity, the Human Rights Commission is making some excellent strides with other human rights commissions across the state. They'll be hosting a summit in November for the human rights commissions to share best practices and ideas for cities, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes of that summit. So thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak for public comment tonight before I close the forum? Okay, seeing none, then consider the public forum closed here and move us to staff updates. Mr. Gaines, do we have any updates for tonight?
Not tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That moves us over to special order of business. Item 3 is a public hearing to consider entering an agreement for private development and to consider conveyance of city-owned real estate to KL Iowa 02 LLC. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and that does pass and takes us to staff, or do you have any written communications filed?
I have no written communications on file.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we have Shane Graham, the city's Economic Development Coordinator. Mr. Graham, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have an agreement before council for a new industrial park project with KL Iowa 02 LLC. This project actually goes back, probably 3 or 4 years ago. Ever since the city acquired that 200 acres to expand our industrial park, we began working with this company on potential plans for a new building of upwards up to about 600,000 square feet. So city staff at the time worked with the company on potential lot layouts and things like that, access, and came up with the lots that are in question before council tonight. So again, this will be for a total project of up to 600,000 square feet on a total of 37 acres. But what is before council tonight is for an agreement for one of those 3 lots for a total building size of 120,000 square feet on Lot 8, which is at the west end of Venture Way in the new expansion area of the industrial park. Again, this building will be, the first phase of this building would be 120,000 square feet. If you remember, another entity of this company, KL Iowa 01 LLC, just recently completed construction of a 51,000 square foot building at the corner of Production Drive and Venture Way. They are in that building and operational. This building is a separate building. They will continue to maintain their operation at that building, as this is a new facility for the expansion and growth of that company. This building will have a minimum valuation of $9 million and a total valuation with the land included of about $10.3 million. Again, this agreement will include options on 2 additional lots for additional phases, again, upwards of the 300,000 to 600,000. They don't really have the size quite configured yet, but in the agreement we do have minimum requirements. So minimum requirements in phase 2 and phase 3 of 90,000 square foot building and minimum valuation of 6.75. So a total building over the 3 phases, if they exercise those options, of over 300,000 square feet and a valuation of over $22 million. So with this agreement, again, this would allow for the donation of just the 1 lot, Lot 8, to begin phase 1 for the 120,000 square foot building, which would allow those options as the company continues to grow, exercise those options as they continue growing. So with that, staff would recommend approval. Company representative is here if there's any questions for the company.
Okay,
Thank you.
Before we go to the council, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item tonight? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed and take us to part 3E, which is the resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement for private development and a minimum assessment agreement, and approving and authorizing execution of a deed without warranty conveying certain city-owned real estate to KL Iowa 02 LLC. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any council discussion? Questions? Yes, Councilmember DeBerg.
I have just a quick question. Is there a time limit on the Phase 2 or Phase 3?
Yes, in the agreement, there's time limits to exercise the option. And then once they exercise that option, I think there's 2 years for each of for Phase 2, Phase 3. And then once they exercise that option, I think they have 2 years to complete the addition. So there's some timeframes to exercise, timeframe once they exercise to complete.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions from council? Seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Did I not go?
All members voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass. And that takes us to item 4, the public hearing to consider vacating a drainage easement on lot 17 and 18 in the West Viking Road Industrial Park Phase 5. Is there a motion received and filed?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. Okay, that passes as well. Do we have written communications filed for this item?
I have no written communications on file.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Then that takes us to staff comments, and we have Ms. Karen Howard, our community, I should know it by now, Community
Planning and Community
Services Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, Mayor. This is a simple item. This is also in the West Viking Road Industrial Park, Phase 5. This is a drainage easement that's on Lot 17 and 18 of that addition of the industrial park. There is currently a company that's wanting to build on this whole site, all of these lots together. So there's no reason that we need to keep that drainage easement that runs down through the middle of these lots. So this was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of vacating that drainage easement.
Okay, thank you. And with that, do we have any public comments for this item tonight? No, then I will consider the public hearing closed for this item and take us over to Part 4E, which is the resolution approving and adopting vacation of a drainage easement on 17 and 18 in the West Viking Road Industrial Park Phase 5. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion from council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor
if I could ask Ms. Howard on this item, they already own it, I presume, and I just wanted to double check, what are we able to do to hold them to a new drainage plan, and when will we see that?
So when they submit a site plan for review, they will have to show that they're meeting all the city's stormwater management requirements.
This will come back for review again before PZB?
This is just for administrative review. So there is a shared basin in the industrial park, so they'll have to drain their water toward those easements. It's a requirement of city code.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. If no other questions, then it's been moved and seconded and it requires a roll call vote.
All members voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that passes as well. And that takes us to item 5, which is a public hearing on a proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the North Cedar Heights Reconstruction Project, Phase 2, and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Madam Clerk, any written communications for this item?
I have no written communications on file.
Okay, thank you. For staff comments, we have Dave Wicke, City Engineer. So the floor is yours, Mr. Wicke.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Tonight's public hearing is for the North Cedar Heights area reconstruction Phase 2, that project. The public hearing is for starting the right-of-way and easement acquisition process. So this is continuing on from Phase 1, where now this is in the design phase of Phase 2, and it's the reconstruction of Woodlawn Drive, East Ridgewood Drive, and Greenwood Avenue. Project requires right-of-way acquisition, permanent easements, and temporary easements to complete the street reconstruction. Included in that is storm sewer, water main, sanitary sewer, curb and gutter, and a new reconstructed asphalt pavement. Project shows the need for fee title and or easement acquisitions for 19 properties and the exhibit on the screen shows you where those areas are at.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weeke. Before going to the council's comments, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on the item? Okay, seeing none, then I will consider the public hearing closed on the item and take us to 5E, which is a resolution approving a public improvement project for the North Cedar Heights Reconstruction Project Phase 2 and authorizing acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion or questions. Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item 6, this is a public hearing on a proposal to undertake a public improvement project for the West Viking Road Reconstruction Project and to authorize acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, as that passes, Madam Clerk, any written communications for this?
I have no written communications on file.
Okay, thank you. And for staff comments, we also have Mr. Weeke. The floor is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So this public hearing is for the right-of-way acquisition process for the West Viking Road reconstruction. This project reconstructs Viking Road from Union Road to Production Drive and continuing on other improvements in the corridor up through Hudson Road. Part of this project will include the street connection to Innovation Drive, which is into the new industrial park. Also included in this project is water main, storm sewer, sanitary sewer, curb and gutter, pavement section. The project requires acquisition and temporary easements and permanent easements from 17 total properties in this corridor as part of this project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weeke. Before going to public comments, we have a correction for written communications.
I apologize. I have one written communication that was received after the packet was distributed, and it was placed in front of council tonight.
Okay, thank you. So council should have that before you now. I did see that on email as well. Okay, so with that, I can now take us over to public comments, which is 6D. Does anyone wish to speak from the public on this item before a vote? Okay, seeing none. Then I'll consider the public hearing. Oh, yes, sir. Just in the nick of time.
My name is Matt Myers. I live at 6616 Viking Road.
Evening, Mr.
And
Myers.
my question for you guys is that temporary easement. I have a lot of trees in that construction easement, and on the paperwork, it shows that there was a grading line. Am I going to lose all my trees?
Okay, thank you for the question. So, Mr. Weeke, if you'd be able to answer that for us.
Until we get the final design, I'm not exactly sure how many trees are going to have to be removed. There is you can see on the screen, it shows the area of easements. Some trees may need to be removed based on the grading requirements that come along with the project, but I don't have a definitive number on exactly what trees at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weeke.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Quick
Well,
question.
let me think.
Can I ask him a question?
Might be more people from.
I just want to clarify a question with him.
Oh, okay, let's do that
Okay.
real quick. It's a little weird, but
I'm assuming, Mr. Weeke, that anything removed from a temporary is replaced with something of comparable size for trees, vegetation?
Well, it depends, really. It depends
I guess if they're
on,
big.
it depends on where we're grading at. I know for part of this project, on the south side of the road, we are putting in a trail. And if there's areas in that where the trail's going to go, those trees will be coming out. And all that work's being done in the right of way.
That would be a permanent easement, though, but in the temporary easement area.
Well, it's in the right of way, so that's not an easement. That's just in the right of way. Temporary easement is going to be for mostly grading purposes and working around driveways and things like that.
okay. And if there are additional questions, if we could close the public hearing first and then bring it back to council, that'd be helpful. But appreciate the question. So does anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir. We'll need you at the podium just so you can be heard on camera. In our new world of live streaming and Channel 15.
Rob Zay, 6728 Viking Road.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Question is do you have a drawing of the intersection that'll be coming into Viking Road? And will it be, yeah, if you can bring that up.
See if I can forward here.
I haven't been able to do anything, Mr. Wiki, with those slides. It seems to be locked up or just stuck on that slide.
We'll just stand easy, everyone, for a minute while he works this out.
So there's the intersection to Innovation Drive, if
Yeah.
that's the intersection you're
Yeah,
inquiring
that's the
about.
one I was referring to. So my question is, we like to build roundabouts and we revamp things a few years down the road. Is there a reason we're not starting this off as a roundabout, or what's the reasoning we're not doing it?
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll get that answered for you, sir, for Mr. Wiki.
So as part of the preliminary design process that we went through, this type of intersection here at this junction was deemed that this would be the best suited intersection type for this junction.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments from the public? Yes, Mr. Riggs? Just name and city for the record, please, sir.
Yeah, my name is Steve Riggs. I'm at 6702 Viking Road. And on this, our property here, there's this area where the aqueduct is draining in from the retention pond. It comes into basically my front yard. And there's a 40, in addition to the regular easements, there's a big blue area. Looks like it's 60 feet by 40 feet. And I'm just wondering, what does that look like? Is that going to be all cement? There's huge cottonwood trees right directly in front of this drainage area. Are those going to be taken out, or how? And I guess I wonder, how does this work so that it doesn't just flood in my front yard?
So this area in blue is all part of permanent easement area for this drainage area. And so you have the culverts coming in and discharging right here. And so at the end of these pipe aprons, there'll be riprap. And that controls the energy dissipation of the water as it flows through those culvert pipes.
Is there going to be any, like, concrete built out into this
No.
thing, or nothing like that?
No.
Just going to create, okay.
Yeah, it gets reshaped. The swale area, it'll be shaped and seeded and all that.
Okay. Do you know if trees will be removed for that?
I'm sure some
So-
trees will need to be removed.
Yeah.
Again, how many, I don't know off the top of my head.
Just out of curiosity, for taking the permanent easements in this property, do we get reimbursed for that?
So if there is some compensation for permanent easement, and we can discuss those more in depth, after tonight. We do have that public information meeting that's coming up in a week or so, and that'll be a good time to ask more of those types of questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riggs. Any other speakers for public comment tonight on this item? Okay, seeing none, then I'll consider the public hearing closed, and that'll take us over to part 6E, which is the resolution approving a public easement or improvement project for the West Viking Road reconstruction project and authorizing acquisition of private property for said project. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion and questions, if there are any.
Yep, Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
I
Councilor
guess out
Gamble.
of curiosity, Mr. Wiki, I would like to let know on this with the public information meeting to come. Citizen reached out to me with some concerns that there was some initial conversation with sidewalks being on the north side of the road, but they're in this plot on the south side. There was some confusion as to when that changed. One, could you speak to when that plan changed? And then The second question, I guess, is some curiosity. If we're setting these plans tonight in motion, what value is there in a public information discussion to come if we can't change it once we vote on it tonight? Are we getting the cart before the horse?
No, I don't believe so, Councilman. So the purpose of the public information meeting is to have the public come out. We explain to them a little bit more in depth what the project is, what it involves. We do take comments and concerns, and if we have to make adjustments based on some of those comments and concerns, then that meeting's a good time to express those comments so we can make those adjustments if we need to in the plans. Now, the trail being on the south side is that it's still in the city's right of way. On the north side of the road, that's in the county. It's county right of way. So we wouldn't be able to put the trail over there.
Okay, and that was the concern this individual reached out with, that they were given some assurances. They alleged that they were told that the sidewalk would be moved. So did we have a previous public information meeting about this
So
project?
we had a public information meeting on this project about 2 years ago.
Right.
And at that time, we had some preliminary designs and some preliminary layouts. So the trail does start on the north side at the Hudson end. And as you get to Production Drive, it crosses that Production Drive, and then goes to the south side and continues west along the south side of Viking Road, because at that point on the north side, we're in the county's right away.
Okay. And one last question, I guess, Mr. Mayor?
Certainly.
When are we planning to break ground on these plans? This year yet, or would this be next year?
We intend to bid this project this winter.
They would then start that development before the snow flies?
No, the construction would start next construction season next spring.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions from council? Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Mr. Wiki, do we know when the next info meeting will be?
The public information meeting?
Yes.
It's the 26th of October.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be out at Public Works.
What time?
I think from 5:30 to 6:30.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Councilmember DeBerg.
I heard both the word trail and sidewalk used, but this is actually a trail.
It's a trail.
So there'd be no requirement for snow removal from any of the homeowners, is that correct?
That's correct.
Other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded for the resolution approving the public improvement for the West Viking Road reconstruction project and authorizing acquisition of private property for said project. Moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
One voting nay, 6 voting yay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass. And that takes us to item 7, which is a public hearing on the proposed amendments to Chapter 26 zoning relative to shared parking requirements in the Downtown Character District, CDDT. Is there a motion to receive and file proof of publication?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Madam Clerk, do we have any communications filed on this item?
I have no written communications on file.
Thank you, ma'am. Staff comments tonight. We again have Ms. Karen Howard. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, this was a city council petition to consider eliminating the zoning code provision that allows on-street parking that directly abuts a property to count toward the shared parking requirement in the downtown character district. Specifically, that section is 26-196E, special parking standards. Just a little background, in the downtown character district, for any new building that contains residential dwelling units or upper floor commercial uses, a certain number of shared parking spaces must be provided. The shared parking spaces are in addition to the required spaces for the project. The shared parking is intended to provide a small amount of publicly available parking in the downtown area for visitors and customers to use in locations where public parking is in short supply. The ordinance currently provides flexibility on how the shared parking requirement is satisfied. It can be satisfied on the private property itself, or within 600 feet walking distance of that property on another property, private property with a development agreement between those property owners, or it can be satisfied on if it has abutting on-street parking. The allowance to count on-street parking toward the requirement mirrors a similar practice under the old downtown code where on-street parking was counted toward the visitor parking requirement. So the new ordinance was drafted to kind of mirror that same provision. This was discussed at the September 13th Planning and Zoning Commission, and on a vote of 8-0, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended disapproval of the petition to delete that section of the zoning ordinance. So this would require a 2/3 majority vote of City Council to approve the ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Before we get to that from council, does anyone from the public wish to speak on this shared parking item? Good evening, sir. Just need a name and city for the record.
Good evening. Walter Burtis with Cedar Falls. As a small business owner on Main Street, I have concerns, along with many other business owners, about allowing developers to develop and use public parking as meeting their requirements for their development. I think we've seen wonderful development in our downtown. But I would strongly caution that if we allow developers to use upwards of 2 to 3 blocks to justify their development, we're going to continue to exacerbate an outstanding issue of parking, as well as the parking infrastructure that many business owners have been asking for over 10 years in downtown. And so I would just like to caution, the amount of times that business owners have come out and voiced their support for parking resolutions, that this is going to hinder that if we don't address this. So,
thank you, Ms. Burtis.
Thank you.
Appreciate your perspective as a downtown business owner. Anyone else wish to speak from the public on the item? Seeing none, then I will consider the public hearing closed for the item and take us over to Part 7E, which is passing an ordinance amending Chapter 26 zoning by removing Section 26-196E, special parking standards, relative to allowing adjacent on-street parking to count towards shared parking requirements in the downtown character district upon its first consideration, and this would require 5 aye votes to pass. So open for council, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council discussion and questions. Yes, Councilor Harding.
So just for clarification, if we approve this, it's just removing the building is here. It's just removing the ability to use adjacent parking spots, which I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, means anything on the border of the building to count towards their shared parking requirement. Is that sum everything up?
Yes.
Okay. Do we know if for some reason in the future we went to some sort of, I know we're possibly doing a parking study, and tonight we're gonna talk about it. Yet I'm so excited. We may end up going to a paid system, and we're going to work towards that, right? So if the street parking would ever become paid parking, are we looking at running into an issue there, or is there just no way that paid street parking is going to happen for us? Do we know? So that would kind of be my question. My worry is, if we change that in the future, how that would look.
So just the ability to count the existing public parking on the street directly abutting a property is what's under review. It doesn't mean that property gets dibs on that parking. It just means that it counts toward their requirement. So it doesn't really make any change. So it wouldn't affect the ability for us to have paid on-street parking.
Okay, so we just, Councilor Chair, what would happen if, last question, sorry.
Sure.
If they built by a municipal lot then, say, and it was adjacent to a municipal lot, then all their shared parking requirements would be counted possibly, depending on the number of spaces, because they could count it from the municipal lot?
No, that's not correct.
Okay.
Just the on-street parking
Just the
that's
on-street.
directly abutting the specific property.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Councilmember DeBerge?
You mentioned earlier when you spoke that it's above the required. Can you remind us what the required parking is?
For residential?
Yeah, residential.
So
and
it's,
commercial.
I believe currently it's 3/4 of a space per bedroom and at least one space per unit.
And that's less than what it was before, or
Um,
wasn't it one before, a solid one?
It was one before, and then, so this is 3/4 of a space for the required parking plus 0.25 spaces for the shared parking.
Okay, so the shared parking really, it's not really above the required because they changed the formula for how we get to that number. But what I'm confused on is if the whole purpose of the shared parking was to have more parking available for the public, how does it create more parking for the public to count what's already there?
So I think the idea behind it was to provide shared parking where the shared parking was not available. And so I think the idea was that certain properties downtown do have public parking available directly abutting the lot. And so similar to how it was done previously, I think that was the reason why we allowed that to be counted toward the shared parking.
So you're saying only a business with a street that's got allowed parking gets the benefit of this, that the other businesses get no benefit?
Well, the public would get the benefit from the public parking.
Well, the
but
public already has that benefit because it's public parking.
So yes, the properties that have on-street parking that abut them get the benefit of being able to count that toward their shared parking. That's correct.
Councilmember Schultz,
To clarify on Susan's question on the residential, now that's rental properties in a residential that they have 3/4 of a space that they have required, and do they have a allowance for on-street, or is it all on property that they have to account for?
So the required parking has to be on the site. So the 3/4 of a space per bedroom has to be on the private site, not the public parking.
That's not a consideration in residential outside of the character district
So
for
every
rentals.
So every rental property has to have required parking on their own private site. In the downtown area, there's a certain requirement, and other areas, there's other requirements for required parking. So this is the specific requirement for downtown, is 3/4 of a space per bedroom and at least one space per unit. And they arrived at that through the parking study that was done downtown. And then I think subsequently it was raised from what the original ordinance was.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry. Just to clarify, this is on new development, right? We're talking about anything that would be built new.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Good clarification.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. Ms. Howard, I look at this and I'm kind of perplexed. The public street parking is already used by customers, retail, entertainment, bars, restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
So it said in the code that each on-street parking space may only be counted once. So if it's already counted as a visitor spot for the bars and restaurants and retail, it would seem to me that we're double counting this spot. Further, it's been stated in your preamble here that in years past, it was understood that the street parking would be for visitors. In years past, we haven't had multi-story, multi-use condo developments downtown. We had mom and pop stores, restaurants that had the proprietor live upstairs and they probably ran their business downtown or downstairs. So this provision doesn't create any new parking. To me, it takes away from the customer parking that our businesses really need downtown. So with time limits of 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever we come up with, I think it's detrimental to the business owner downtown that this is going to take away from their customer parking. So that was part of the reason we started down this path. So.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions? Seeing none, then back to my notes here. So if no other comments, then we're on item 7E, which is the passing the ordinance amending Chapter 26, removing special parking standards relative to adjacent on-street parking to count towards shared parking requirements of the downtown character district. It's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarification.
Yes, please.
If we vote yes, that means we're removing.
That's correct. It's
Yes.
to amend.
Double negative.
Yes. Thanks for the clarification. So moved and seconded to amend and requires a roll call vote.
6 voting aye, 1 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that does pass with 6 votes. And that takes us over to old business, which is passing ordinance 3044, granting a partial property tax exemption to KL Iowa 01 LLC for construction of a warehouse and manufacturing facility at 6313 Production Drive upon its second consideration. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional discussion on this one? Any from the public? Talked about this in our last meeting. So moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that passes and brings us out of old business and into the consent calendar. Will these items be acted upon by a voice vote on a single motion unless someone from the council or the public requests that an item be considered separately? And we certainly are happy to do that if desired. Does any council member wish to pull an item from 9 to 11? Okay, seeing none. Does any from the public wish to pull an item 9 to 11? Okay, seeing none. Then is there a motion to approve? Well, yes. Yes, sir.
In this is the, I didn't see the agenda up there very well, but.
Yes, this will be item 13.
Item 13?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you.
I've got that in mind.
Good,
Sure, it's circled on my notes. Okay, so with that, good clarification. Is any, I guess it's been moved and seconded, or is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that does pass, and then takes us over to the resolution calendar. Well, these items will be acted upon in a roll call vote on a single motion without separate discussion, unless some for the council or the public requests that a specific item be considered separately. I'll go ahead and pull that item 13 for you, sir. And then looking at any others from council.
22.
Item 22 we'll pull separately. So Simon Harden.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Sires.
Number 15.
15, all right. Yes. Okay, others? Okay, does anyone from the public request to pull an additional item off of that resolution calendar?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
did we do 10 and 11? Did I miss that?
Yes,
Is that
we covered
on
that
our-
in the consent
okay.
calendar. Okay, and then if no others, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution calendar minus items 13, 15, and 22.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, and requires a roll call vote.
All members voting aye.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So those do pass. And that brings us back to item 13, which is the resolution rescinding Resolution 22,360, being a resolution approving and adopting the Imagine College Hill Vision Plan. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Open for council questions first. Questions and discussion. I pulled the item, so I don't know who wants to kick us off here then. Or I can go right to public comment if you like, and then we can discuss after.
Sure.
Okay, so we'll go to public comment first. So if speakers like to come forward, try to do a pro-con if we can. So if we have one in favor of rescinding, one against rescinding, we'll go that way. Otherwise, we'll just have all the same, and that's fine too. So who would like to start us off on the public end? So Ms. Chrisman, just provide name and address for the record, or city for the record, please.
Hannah Chrisman, Cedar Falls, President of the Board of Directors for the College Hill Partnership. Just back again to please ask that you not rescind the plan. I understand that you have some apprehensions, but rescinding the plan as a whole, I think, is a pretty aggressive approach. If you could please instead just look at the issues that you feel are important and just focus on those for the time being. I think that would potentially be a compromise. Our organization has put a lot of work into this, and to see it just rescinded entirely is tough. So please consider that and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker? Yes, Ms. Hagberg.
I just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Chrisman said, not rescinding the College Hill vision plan. It's the doorway to our university and our students, and it's such a vibrant part of the city. It has so much potential. So I just want to reiterate everything Ms. Chrisman said. Please don't rescind the College Hill plan. There's so much to look at there. There's so much to grow from there, and I know really investing in that area would be better than just rescinding the plan. So I don't support rescinding it. Thank you for your time.
Was that brought up at all in NISG?
Yeah, actually, we have our president and vice president have both spoken to me about this. We've had students come and talk to us about this as well. They're very passionate. A lot of them use the Hill. A lot of them are active on the Hill. A lot of them go to the Hill. I think there's maybe a misconception that the part of the Hill District I'm talking about is the coffee shops and the bar area, but it is a vibrant area, and students use it a lot, and we've had a lot of students who would like to see the city do something, and I don't know that it sends the best message to students that we're just going to rescind the plan. That's what we've heard from students and something I've discussed with our president and vice president. So just wanted to get those comments in there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Next speaker, Dr. Nook, do you want to be our next? Name and city for the record, please, sir.
Mark Nook, 2501 College Street. Also speaking tonight as president of the University of Northern Iowa. I wanted to give someone else a chance to speak on the other side of this before I got up, but I didn't see anybody. So first of all, I've had a chance to review the minutes and the video from the October 2nd meeting, and really appreciate the thoughtful discussion that happened at that meeting. I think it was a good discussion overall. I do, though, want to encourage you to vote against this recommendation to repeal the College Hill Vision Plan. In reviewing the video, I noticed that there's a few things that all of the people on the council agreed on. I think everybody in this room would agree on. One is the importance of College Hill, the College Hill neighborhood to the city and to the university. There was no debate about that. There was also no debate about the importance of having a strong UNI here in this community. And the strength of UNI really does depend on the strength of this city, and especially the strength of entities that are really close to our university, where our students who live on campus can easily walk to facilities that are there, where students that are living in that neighborhood can easily access activities, grocery stores, things of that sort. I think the other thing that all of you expressed a real interest in is seeing districts 1, 2, and 3, what most of us think of as the core of the College Hill neighborhood, be successful, and that there's a strong need to revitalize that area. Those 3 points didn't seem to be up for debate. In fact, there seemed to be large agreement about that. I'd like to point out this is a vision plan, a vision plan. It's not a construction plan. It's not a zoning plan. It's a vision plan. It gets on paper the feelings of the community members that are most impacted by this neighborhood. The people that live there, that you heard from the other night at the meeting, the students and other people who use, especially those entities that exist in districts 1, 2, and 3. It is a plan, and there's no plan that will make everybody in 100% agreement. There are things about this plan that the university would rather not be in there quite that way, but it's a very workable plan. And what we see is the importance of the redevelopment of the Hill District, and in particular, areas 1, 2, and 3. So it is really, I'm really here to encourage you not to repeal this plan, but instead to endorse this plan again and ask the city staff to get to work on this plan with a focus on districts 1, 2, and 3, because there's an urgency for us to revitalize that area, for us to make that a vital place, not only for our students to go, but from people across this city to go. I'm very interested in the flow of people from campus to downtown and from downtown to campus. We need vibrant bike paths. We need vibrant city streets. We need vibrant sidewalks so that our students can get downtown, which the revitalization of our downtown is something that the entire state talks about. I'd like to see that done for the Hill. And I'd like to see people that are living downtown be as interested coming to the Hill as our students are going downtown. And make this two places that are great gathering places for the people of the city of Cedar Falls, and a place that will actually attract people to that region, to our community, and from my perspective, vested interest, to our university. This is an area that has caused concerns for some of our parents of our students, and having it revitalized is important. Repealing this plan means starting over. It means the urgency that some of you, many of you, expressed for revitalizing Districts 1, 2, and 3 begins again, if it's really repealed. But if we say what we really want to do is urgently redevelop the Hill, then we don't repeal this plan. We give direction to city staff to get to work on Districts 1, 2, and 3. And we can provide instruction to them to think about those zoning borders. And I know that was part of the concern. Those zoning borders were the old borders. This group that came together to put together the vision plan respected those borders, but everybody knew they were just the old zoning borders. You could ask the committee, the group working on the zoning council, to think about and make recommendations about how those borders might change to fit the new needs of the city, since these zoning boundaries are a little bit older. That could be part of what moves forward. It is a vision plan. It's not a zoning plan. It's not a construction plan. It's a way to get the ideas from this community into your hands, into the hands of the rest of the community, so that we can start to work on what we're going to do to revitalize Districts 1, 2, and 3, so that they meet the needs of the people in the districts that surround it, so that they meet the needs of our students, so that they meet the needs of the rest of this community, as all of us try to build a really vibrant city of Cedar Falls. Thank you for your time. Thank you for considering this. And I hope you'll help us move College Hill District forward and this entire city forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hood. Mr. Grittis, name and city for the record, please, sir.
Groathouse. Cedar Falls, Iowa. I guess maybe a question for Mr. Rogers. I guess I would hate to see something get thrown out when there is, I think, a lot of common ground. I don't know if it's possible to amend part of it and we can say yes to what we all agree on and then allow the next council that's going to get elected to go and hash out the details of what's next. I know it's a big chunk. I was talking to a lot of folks down there today, and there's concerns I get in the 4, 5, 6, and 7. As it gets farther away from the college, there's some real concerns of, hey, what does this mean? How does this impact me? If I want to make an update to my home, how is that going to change things for me? And so that's a big conversation to have, and I probably don't have time or capacity to have it all tonight, but I believe there's some parts that 6 or 7 of us probably, you all agree on. I don't know if it's possible to amend it and take those parts in and then leave the rest to the next council, and then we don't have to have a black and white either or, yes or no, and start things over. So would agree with a lot of what President Nook said, and I think that 1 and 2 specifically, and then maybe 1, 2, and 3, we all know it needs work. Is the plan perfect? No. What we have right now isn't perfect either. So I'd love to see if there's some compromise that can cross over. I'm sure there's something 6 or 7 of y'all can get on page with, and we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We can certainly talk about that when we're back in the council discussion, asking Mr. Rogers about that. Yes, other speaker. So if there's someone in favor of rescinding, if not, then yes, please, Mr. Dever.
Hello, Dave Dibler, 1616 Campus Street. My wife and I run Octopus and Mohair Pear. I spend a lot of time on College Hill and a lot of time thinking about College Hill, arguably too much time thinking about it, but I would strongly encourage you to not rescind the vision plan. It's a bad idea. It has potential to do a lot of harm to College Hill. We're on a bit of a roll right now, maybe even more harm than moving the homecoming parade to downtown. So we need to keep the momentum we have going. Like others have mentioned, it's a vision plan. It's an idea. It's not, binding. So I just think it would be very harmful, and I'd really encourage you to not rescind the current vision plan, and let's keep moving forward. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tyber. Next public speaker from either side.
Sir, name and city for the record, please.
Danny Lovick, 4516 Coronado Court. I don't need to repeat a lot of what was said, but just wanted to help reiterate that from talking with residents, I think a really big focus on solutions is what people are looking for. I know there's some concerns with some of the politics behind the form-based zoning and things that were built into some of the extended districts of this plan, but I think that's the value of it as a plan is we need to look at what are some of the pieces we can agree on and move some of those forward, because I think a lot of residents are really just looking for what is the progress we're going to make on some of these initiatives. So I understand there's concerns, and I think any plan we'll ever do, we're talking about a parking plan tonight as well, we'll always have some concerns, but I think we need to take the pieces that really have strong support and shared consensus between us and help move some of those forward. So I just want to reiterate, thank you guys for reviewing this, because I know there are concerns and justifiable concerns in some of the extended districts, but I'd just like to see us move forward with the pieces we can agree on. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loddick. Next speaker. Yes, ma'am. Name and city for the record, please.
So my name is Lorinda, or Lori K. Young. I live on Cedar Falls, East Ridgewood, and I'm here in support of keeping the plan. My understanding is that when things get rescinded, or even parts of them get done, the whole thing gets put to the side, and it doesn't happen. And I'm concerned about the time that people put into volunteering, coming in for comment, working with others. We want to support that in our community. And I do not think it is a good vision when people from our citizen group have done that, have worked to put together a plan that has maybe areas that need to be worked on further, but as it is a vision plan, it's not written in stone. I think we need to validate the work that is done by citizens of this city. That is what makes our city great.
Thank you.
I recommend not rescinding it.
Appreciate the comments. Next speaker. Last call. Okay, then with that, I'll bring it back to council for questions and comments. Yes, Councilor DeBear.
Well, I was one of the members that pushed for the rescinding of this, and one of my main factors was because it's just way too large of an area. It's taking into over 200 some blocks, and yet everything I've heard all the public talk about is what we call the hill, that couple blocks. So what I'd like to do is instead is rescind this, and then let's go back and ask our staff to look at the C3, R4 districts, which is really the area where everybody's talked about, and look at what are the improvements or changes that we can do to make the development that everybody seems to want, because it's all in the C3, R4 district. And I think that would be better to get something moving versus this large plan that incorporates 8 different areas, of which some of these areas, especially as you get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they're not part of the hill, as everyone refers to imagine the hill, and that's not anywhere near the hill.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Harding.
Well, I don't think we should rescind. A couple things. One, I do agree with Susan that it's a big scope, and maybe we should rein it back and just focus on 1, 2, and 3. And the proof is really in the pudding. When it was adopted, it was also decided at the goal setting that we weren't going to do anything with it, and we haven't. And so that's what this body has the power to do. We said don't do anything with it, and they didn't. So when you have 7 council members that say something, it seems to happen. And I get that people are nervous about parts of it. Again, I would just say let's go forward and keep it and look at reworking 1, 2, and 3, pushing forward with that. Another thing I've heard is that it's hard to get change made. It's hard to do this, but again, that's on the council. That's our onus. 2 more examples of that. We've already changed in the last. We've changed one thing with the downtown zoning, which was the church parking lot recently. That was 6-1 all the way through. It looks like 6-1 tonight for changing the using adjacent parking things. So again, if we want changes, it's got to be a unified council. If you get 6 people on board, changes will be made no matter what. And if things aren't changing, that's not P&Z or staff or anything. That's council not having a unified vision. So I would encourage us. I after seeing that, we have made some changes, and we're continuing to make changes and tweaks to it, that to not rescind, and then tonight make a referral at the end to just look at the boundaries of 1, 2, and 3, and what we can do with 1, 2, and 3 to go forward. And I would encourage those conversations to happen at goal setting, so that the new council can be on board with those conversations. And then you can talk about whether it's form-based or this or that. Those are all things that are viable, that council, with a unanimous vote and vision, have control of. That will happen. So again, it's on us as a council. It's rescinding is just, it's going to send a negative, it does send a negative view to College Hill, and it can do some hurtful things. So let's jump on board and figure out what we can get behind, and let the next council do that.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Cyrus.
Believe it or not, I'm in partial agreement with Simon. We could rescind everything but 1, 2, and 3. And the focus really needs to be on that College Hill area. And what they need to do, or what we need to help them with, needs to get done, so we can revitalize College Hill. But to push it all down the road all the time, we can make the decision now, rescind everything except 1, 2, and 3, and move on. Because then whatever they're going to need to do, they can do. So that's what I'd be in favor of. I'd rather have us just go ahead and rescind from 4 all the way up. 8 over here is way far away. That isn't even what you would call College Hill area. And the property that Gil and I own on 12th Street, that's not a part of it. So the whole thing is, let's concentrate on 1, 2, and 3, rescind everything else, because I don't know why it got so, that's a huge area. That's a huge area. So that'd be my recommendation. That's all.
Just to Dave's point, since we almost agree, you don't have to actually rescind 4 or 5. Just tell staff, don't look at that, because that's what we did before, and it worked. We said, don't do anything, and they didn't.
But this would just clean it up, and then we could move on with 1, 2, and 3. That way you don't have to worry about all this other stuff. Because look at way down here at number 8, that's Hudson Road and University Avenue. That's not part of College Hill. The part of College Hill is 1, 2, and 3. Let's just focus on that and get them the help they need. That's all.
Mr.
Now, if you say that's all, I'm not going to let you speak again.
Fair enough.
Mr. Mayor.
I would like to get a clarification from Mr. Rogers about what is legally available tonight to us for the resolution that's on the floor.
So what was recommended to be considered by council is a straight up or down vote on rescinding this plan. That's it. So that's what's before council. This idea of amending it, first of all, there's been no public notice about amending and exactly in what way it would be amended. And this plan's, I don't know, 100 pages, and you can't just say we're going to go 1, 2, 3 and not the rest. It's all integrated, and so it'd take a lot more work to get to some sort of amendment, which the public has no notice that we were even considering that tonight. So I'm afraid the way it's framed for council right now, it's up or down on rescinding.
Is it legally possible if this resolution to rescind, if it fails, could the council come forward with a referral to have a resolution drafted that would specify zones 1, 2, and 3 as being the new character district?
So within the document itself, council could make a referral to direct staff to concentrate on certain areas or others. That'd be perfectly acceptable, and frankly, staff, if council says, staff, you should do that, staff's going to do that. So it can be within the confines of this, and council could narrow the focus in whatever way it wishes as a direction to staff.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just as a question, as a follow-up on that, wouldn't the simplest be what I had then recommended, which was if we rescind this, we then go back with a referral at the end to ask the staff to look at the C3, R4 zones? Because that's what's already exist.
So I'm not sure what that would be exactly. So what's being proposed is no public hearings or input on starting over. It would just be if I understand correctly, then a new plan only,
Well, no, at referrals at the end would be to simply make a referral to send to committee to review the R4C3 districts as to improvements or changes to make in those districts within that overlay area.
absolutely. So that portion of the plan that talks about those areas could come to a committee, and council could consider all of those provisions, whether it likes it or not, and refine that part of the plan. Sure, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. The idea of going to 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3 technically don't exist in real life. We have R4 and C3. To Susan's point, that's the core of the College Hill, and it covers a pretty good area. Number 3 area, I think, was called University area, and it's really quite inaccurate. There's part of Area 8 that was in the College Hill overlay. 28th and 29th Street is right adjacent to the new engineering area. So there's a lot of inaccuracies there that we'd have to clean up with the committee in a discussion. So I like the idea of rescinding and then come back with a referral at the end of the meeting to focus on, as Susan described, C3 and R4, which is the core of the College Hill area. And we're not throwing it out, like some people have implied. We got a lot of great data here. The executive summary had, I think, 9 or 10 or 11 items. Many are great, bike paths and so on and so forth. So, but the scope of these areas, the idea of even having character areas, it's not well received by most of the public that understand it.
I would have to question that, though.
What speaking, Mr. Mayor.
What data do you have for that?
Speaking to constituents. So we can adjust, amend C3, R4 to do it as desired, and I think that'd be the way to go, legally, according to what Mr. Rogers is saying. So, and also on top of that, I found that planning and zoning has shown that they're not really willing to compromise because we've sent things back to them and they deny us on a 0 to 8 vote. And we have to turn it around with a supermajority. And it's always this tug of war and arm wrestling, and it's not good. So I'm in favor of repealing, coming back, picking items through a committee for the next council meeting, reviewing, as Susan described, R4 and C3. Thank you.
Councilmember Schultz.
I was wondering if I could ask Mr. Gaines a question. If we were to have not seen the vision plan come back up, and as a council, we came to staff and said, you know what, it's time we paid some attention to 1, 2, and 3. Do you guys have some things loaded and ready to go, and we can just ask you to take off on those?
That's kind of a broad question with regard to, I think one of the things we would probably reference is the vision plan, just because that's what the community has the input in. Now, if the council rescinds that, I think we would have to start to look at, are we just typically looking at the R4 and C3 areas, which staff could do if we're directed by the council as well. So, but we would probably, if we're refining those boundaries, want to get public input, and that plan would, again, go through the planning and zoning as what their role is. So.
Okay. I guess where I was going, or I was hunting, there was that C3 and R4 seems to be the focus that President Nook and others talked about, the core of College Hill. And when we start looking at, we've had references to 8, there's actually 9 here. You know, you start going to 8 and 9, and in all those, we lose focus, I think, on the 1, 2, and 3 of the C3 and R4. And that's where I would like to see some emphasis placed on and got some momentum going, as the owner of the Octopus was saying, on things that are happening on the Hill already. I don't, the concern that I think others share is that this is not in stone and it's a vision plan. This is a drawing for zoning. That's the next step on this, is what I see. And it's maybe a little muddy for some people, but this is where the next step is, to zone these. So that's the concern. Somehow I want to get to 1, 2, and 3, or C3 and R4, and I'm not really looking to rescind this whole thing. I just want to get the emphasis on that area.
So when everybody talks about, hey, let's look at whether it's zones 1, 2, and 3, or C3 and R4, that's really what you're talking about, is getting to work on it, is developing the next zoning to come up. And what that would entail is boundaries and all of those things. So if we're just looking at C3 and R4, which is fine, but would we come back and refine some of those boundaries? Because sometimes they get a little wonky when it's either crossing the street or some of those things. So, and all of that would come back before the planning and zoning and the council with regard to how is that written. Council can even try to give some direction on what type of ordinance you want to see, or what things within those districts do you want to see. So,
And that's something that could be a joint meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission and City
Absolutely.
Council, correct? Yes, Councilor Harding, and then Councilor Dunn.
So, again, I mean, it's looking like it's probably going to be 4-3. It'll get rescinded, possible veto, supermajority. Next council is going to come up, going to talk about it at goal setting. They're probably going to put it back in place. It's going to be a big hubbub. All right. So we can just skip all that, which is pretty much what's going to happen, possibly. Strong 88.67%. Or if you rescind it and you do C3 and R4, it's literally the same thing. It's going to be a type of form-based zoning. It will, because they're going to come back, whether you call it a character district or you call it C3, if you make the rules in C3 to be mixed use and be special to that area, you have just done form-based zoning. Form-based zoning just means you base your zoning on a form in that specific area. In fact, the overlay was form-based zoning. We already have it. If you're that against it, and you want to rescind it and call it by another name, that's fine to me, but we're really just arguing about semantics. And secondly, the proof is in the pudding. We said put it on the shelf and don't do anything. They didn't do anything. We passed ordinances to change the downtown with votes 6-1 already multiple times. It's not P&Z's job to agree with us. It's their job to say what they do and their homework, and we come back and make our decision. If we have 6 council members that want to do something every single time within the law, it will happen. It is our own fault that things are not moving forward. And I'm a part of that. I get that. I'm willing to compromise. Let's put a very narrow scope on it. Let's say 1, 2, 3, come back, just look at keep the plan, look at C3, call it whatever you want, because it's literally the same thing. It's going to be zoning for the College Hill area, specific to them and only them, which is form-based zoning. So again, we already have it.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Dunn first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all of that, but I want to get back to it takes money to kind of move forward with the zoning. And I guess, Director Rodenbeck, can you help me recall? I believe we took some funding away from that in this year's budget discussion. Am I correct?
So went back and looked at what was discussed at the CIP and the budget. And so during the CIP process, just a reminder to everyone that we lowered the funding every year to $25,000 a year, but we added $50,000 in 24 and 25, but only for the comp. plan. So there is 75,000 shown in FY '24 and '25, but 50,000 was for the comp plan. And the 25,000 was to review zoning updates or amendments, not new zoning initiatives. So I think that's probably what you're referring to about that. And then as part of the budget process, there was a motion during the budget hearing to make a motion to take out the funding, but that motion actually failed.
Okay. I think
So there is 25,000 in there, but again, I think, like what Simon Hoover was talking about, staff was really directed not for any new zoning initiatives. It was to work on if there was any amendments needed.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not, obviously, again, that was a council discussion and the majority agreed to that. So thank you for bringing or clarifying for that for me. But I guess my thought is Simon's right. We have been sitting on this and, I can respect that. I'm only one of 7, so I can respect how that vote has gone. But in my mind, I'm wondering what would actually, and again, I guess maybe I'm asking staff, if for some reason we said tonight, say we said tonight to go to work on, our, C3 or R4 or whatever or zones 1, 2, and 3, do we have the money to do that? Or would we still be in the same boat where we really should save this for goal setting so that staff can know that's a council goal and know we need to work on the CIP and get it back in the budget so we can hit the ground running?
Well, it might be Stephanie or Karen might have to help. I guess what I don't know is what they would need in terms of outside consultants to move ahead with some of that. Obviously, if there would be staff time for that, there's not really a cost, so to speak, for that. But if they're having to hire a consultant to help with developing those zoning things, then yeah, again, the 25,000, we were directed, it wasn't for new, but that doesn't mean council can't tell us, take the 25,000 and spend it now for College Hill. So they could do that. Or, like you said, it can be part of goal setting. Council can tell us as working on the FY '25 budget, which would start in July 1st, 2024, to provide funding, make sure and budget for that. So we would have it for FY '25.
It's really going to depend on the scope that the council wants to address. And then we'll go from there, identifying, do we need to go through a consultant selection process, or is that going to be staff-led, or how we would handle that?
Okay. Yeah, I know that I agree with Simon that this is likely. I just agree that this is, I think, a damaging discussion in itself. And that's, I guess, all I have to say.
So, quick question for Director Sheets. With the discussion going forward, if it's not rescinded and there's direction to have a new zoning ordinance created, does that have to entail the entire site plan area? Or could that be a much narrower area? It can legally, based on what's in this plan, can the council provide direction to be a much smaller area of?
Yes, the council should direct staff on what areas they want to focus on with any project that moves forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Cruz and then Councilmember DeBoer.
Thank you. I guess to Simon's point that we have form-based zoning, we have what's called across the nation hybrid zoning. It's elements of Euclidean traditional zoning and form-based zoning. It's well documented, and if you do a lot of the research, you'll see that. And that's what I advocate for. I have no problem with a multi-use building in C3 or R4. That makes sense. But what I've seen happen downtown, when we went with the character areas, we literally wiped out all the property rights that the people had on those areas and then redrew character areas. I think we need to preserve the property rights of the people that have been there for decades and focus on how will we adjust the codes for multi-use in C3 R4, and we're not throwing it all out. We received and filed, and then what we're rescinding is the adopting of this agreement. So the information is there. A lot of the data, the executive summary with bike trails and an entrance to the hill and all those sorts of things are there to pick from. We don't throw it away. I mean, people preach doom and gloom and predict doom and gloom, but we're not throwing it away. It's going to be a hybrid situation going forward. We got hybrid zoning districts all over town, essentially. So to Mr. Rogers' point, the vote here is to up or down rescind. So basically we unadopt is maybe a better word to say, because that's what we're really doing. And then committee meeting, through a referral, we asked for a committee meeting at the next council meeting to look at C3R4, which is in place right now. And then we can discuss further if we want to do 1 and 2, 1, 2, and 3, adjust the boundaries of 3, or just look at R4C3 and implement multi-use properties in there.
Thank you. I just want a point of clarification. For the property rights of owners in the downtown character district, did the new zoning wipe out their property rights? Or is there a grandfathering that takes place with the existing owners there?
I assume that's to me. And current property owners have vested rights that new zoning laws cannot take away.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted that clarification.
Mr. Mayor, can I question that, Mr. Rogers?
Since you brought it up.
The new character areas downtown did indeed totally wipe out any vested property rights that they had for R4 zoning, R3. That's gone. Then we see multi-use zoning, missing middle market, multiplexes going in, and somebody in a certain zone can't prevent that from happening.
You mean that somebody hasn't started a project yet, and then a zoning ordinance is passed, and then that applies to new future development? I agree with you, but not existing.
So if, to clarify, existing, like we got R2 in this area, in this situation, if we, close to campus, if we say that multi-use properties can be built right amongst single-family homes, the residents don't have a chance to object because they bought a home, lived there for decades with the idea it's single-family. And a number of years ago, we put into effect an ordinance that prevents single-family homes from being duplexed. In essence, this has taken that away and getting rid of it.
What exactly are you proposing is being taken away? That
Their protection for not having single-family homes made duplexes or having a triplex built next to them when they've been living in a single-family neighborhood forever.
So you're talking about neighbors and development around them. So, but their own property rights to live as they've always lived in a single-family home is not affected. The policy behind boundaries crouching in, allowing development, that's a policy decision that decision makers like you make.
But I still believe they're losing their property rights. The peaceful enjoyment of their property as they've bought a property, just like we're seeing in Autumn Ridge and other areas of town, that they bought and built a home
Point
in a
of order.
certain area.
Let's focus, if we can.
I'm focusing on the
Hill.
density of R1, R2. It is absolutely relevant.
I'll
to
allow
this.
it. Continue.
But
He's talking
That's
about
fair. Go ahead.
the
Go
relation
ahead.
between.
It's, I think, it dramatically changes a person's peaceful enjoyment of their property in their neighborhood. When we change zones into character zones or form-based, I think focusing on just, like we've said numerous times, R4 and C3, because 1, 2, and 3 have been drawn kind of abstractly, just with a group of people that maybe don't even live there. So anyway, that's all.
Mr. Mayor?
I think I
I
was
know,
next.
yeah,
Sorry.
Councilmember Beer had next comment, and then Councilmember Dunn.
I wanted to verify something that Jennifer had said. When you talked about the $25,000 that's available through the budget process but it cannot be used for new zoning. So if we create a new character district, that's going to be new zoning versus, but it can be used for existing zoning. So if we wanted to make amendments to our R3 or R4C3, that money would be available for that. Because
Sure. I mean, I was just reading off of when we had the CIP discussion. It just said $25,000 to review zoning code updates or amendments but not no new zoning initiatives. I mean, that was just the verbiage, but you're right, there's 25,000. I don't think anything's been spent. We're 3.5 months into our fiscal year. I don't think any of the 25,000's been spent. So if the direction would be, like you said, to take the 25,000 and help bring back things, like you said, for the R3, whatever districts you want to call it, I mean, I think that would be available to spend.
But creating the new character district, which therefore creates the new zoning, would not be allowed.
Again, I mean, I think it's just, I'm just kind of reading what we said for CIP. And now, I don't know when the new zoning initiative meant don't go and yes, do new zones for College Hill. Don't do any new visioning plans for other areas of town. Is there some, it's not like there's Iowa code that says if you said that, now that's what it has to be used in the budget. You could give staff direction about how you want them to use that 25,000.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dunn?
I feel like I'm repeating myself and repeating what some of the folks in the audience have said, but again, this is just the vision. So the policy that some of my fellow counterparts up here are talking about, we haven't got there yet. This is just the vision. This is like what could be, right? I mean, that's how I think of it. So like the how we get there, that comes later. I think I'm so confused. We keep talking about things like they're happening and they're not. We haven't got there yet. All we're doing is sitting on a vision that's 2.5 years old now. So it gets confusing, I think, for folks when we talk like that.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, final comments.
So back to what, if these are final comments, then we're going to get to it. I think we ought to get on with the vote. I still emphasize in 1, 2, and 3 and not to rescind this and put our focus on that. I am impressed with Nostradamus and his fortune telling.
Oh, don't worry.
But I'm hoping that we can make some real progress on this. And if it's when the first of the year comes around, but I'm looking not to wait until then. If we can get something moving sooner than later, great.
Final comments? Yes.
Final comment, last tactic. I tried to use some logicking. Doesn't look like it's working. Fair. It's controversial. I get it. I just don't understand why we have to do it right now, right before goal setting, right before the election, and then do it next meeting and set what we want to do when there's a whole new council coming in, which it's obviously an election topic, and then they could change it in January and do all that. So again, I get it. We can go down this route. I'm going to survive. The city's going to survive, but it's just disappointing to see that we didn't learn our lesson from last time, and we're just going to go ahead and try to do it this way. And so even if it gets rescinded and it gets supported, I just want to be on the record for saying that we should not be the ones making the decision once it's rescinded. If we rescind it, let the next council make the decisions on what they want to do with it. We're 4 meetings away. We're 2 meetings away from goal setting, which is when this needs to happen anyway. There's no reason we need to be rescind, figure out C4, C3, tell staff to go, especially when we could waste money. And we're always talking about money because the new council could have a new idea and then it's going to cost us time. So if we are going to rescind, fine. I'm not going to vote for it. But let's at least be wise enough to let the next council figure out what they want to do with it and not come back with next meeting and tell staff what to do. So, yeah, there we go. That's it. I'm done.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Sires.
I have a question for Kevin.
Yes, please, go ahead.
What guarantee could we have that we would bring back 1, 2, and 3? Because I don't want to vote to rescind this without having 1, 2, and 3 on the books to go through so the College Hill can get what it needs. That's the issue I have.
Right.
Because if I vote to rescind this, they won't get what they want, but it's too big of an area. Can we postpone this one meeting?
So to answer your first question, the risk is that a majority council doesn't want to focus just on 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't happen that way. I mean, that's the risk in rescinding. Then you got nothing to go from. But it's up to council to, if council wishes to postpone to a definite date in the future. That would have to be a motion by council approved.
I move that we postpone this so that we can come back with something we all agree on, because I think we're very close. That way we could, okay, that's all.
Moved and seconded for discussion. This is to amend or to postpone the item until our next meeting on November 6th, correct?
Mr. Mayor.
What will we come back with?
We'd come back with the 1, 2, and 3. We would go with that and rescind everything else.
Mr. Mayor, or did...
Councilmember Cruz?
Councilman Sires, I think you're missing some of the big concerns to bring back 3, because 3, we, at the last meeting, agreed is dramatically off. It doesn't cover what they're calling the university area adequately. To what Susan was saying, we focus on the College Hill. That's C3, R4. Covers a pretty good sized area up to 19th Street, 28th, over to Olive. And that'll hit on a majority of what many of these business owners and people want right there. Then we can always expand from there at our discussion at the committee meeting. So rescinding will put it back in focus on what we want it to focus on. Now, who's to say number 2 area is properly designated? Because when we adopted this, that puts it in motion. Receiving and filing is what we're going back to. By rescinding, we go back to a receive and file. Then with a referral, we can talk further. We can get more feedback from President Nook and other merchants and so on.
Point of order, just really quickly. Adoption does not put it in motion because we as a council put it in motion. We told them to put it on the shelf and they did. Adoption says that when we do move forward, use the document for information. We adopt it and we'll look at it.
Well, thanks for interrupting, but
That was a point of order, so that wasn't interrupting.
Okay, I stand corrected. In my experience now in 6 years, every time we adopt something, it becomes a steamroller going forward. And you got to fight to change it. And we've seen that multiple times in other documents here, other studies. So I still think that rescinding, then picking out the current existing C3R4, we'll focus in on that. If we want to expand a little bit in some of the 3, define 2, I think that's the point we need to look at. That makes the most sense. Because we can always come forward with it. If you approve it, it's still that ball rolling down the hill.
But we can postpone it until the next meeting.
We're going to have the same discussion.
No, because we'll be able to knock it down to 1, 2, and 3, or the C2 or R4.
Let's do it at the committee meeting. It's up or down right now.
So
and then we do a committee meeting, the next council session.
But I don't think you'll get your votes to rescind without having a guarantee that 1, 2, and 3, that lets the business owners know that we're serious, we're going to keep them on the board.
Well, 1, 2, and 3 technically don't exist.
I understand. We can qualify it, as Susan said, with R4 and C3.
That's what
And I'm good with that, but Kevin said we had to write that up and then have it at the next meeting. And then we can just vote it in and then we're done. Otherwise, we'll...
So I got a question for Mr. Rogers then. With having this postponed one meeting, we still have to vote on this item, correct?
Right now, the pending vote is postponement.
Yep.
And then when we get, if that fails, we go back to the agenda item. If the motion to postpone passes, then this just picks up and goes to the next meeting.
So my question is, what then is expected of that, or what's available at the next meeting?
I think
Vote up or down again?
I think Councilmember Sires' idea, there'd have to be at the same time, probably referral to committee that would precede the meeting.
Okay. So
talking about those districts that Councilmember Sires is talking about. It's kind of a two-part thing.
Which, Mr. Mayor, in that order, that referral has to come later tonight to provide publication to the public. So to postpone this discussion to the next meeting affords us a new option to deliberate. That's the only thing postponement does.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
so
won't gain anything.
Anything else for postponement for discussion?
Well, just regarding postponement, if we voted no, not to postpone it, and instead we voted to rescind it, we could still go forward with my plan, which was to do the referral at the end for the C3, C4.
True.
Okay. So I'll take the vote then for the, what's on the floor for a motion to postpone. Is that a voice vote to postpone, Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Okay. So all in favor of postponing to the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Can I see a show of hands for aye? 1, 2, 3, and for nay? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that fails. Keeps us on this track for tonight. So any final comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Campbell.
I hadn't spoken at length on this item. I wanted to go a little bit against the idea that it's just a vision plan from the plan itself. The Imagine College Hill project was initiated not only to establish a roadmap or framework for future growth and development, but also to provide inspiration. The wording in this document itself doesn't say that it's a vision plan, it says that it's a how-to plan. So that's part of the reason we have concerns here. It has other items like adopt new zoning for the entire College Hill study area. To be able to eradicate those portions, you almost have to rescind the entire document and come back strategically with just a few places. In addition to that, there were public comment in here that gave us some concerns. Personally, having reviewed this after I got on council, because it was passed before I got on council, I would remind other council persons that it was pushed through in November. We told people at a public meeting that we would deliberate on a second reading a month later, and then 2 weeks later came back and brought it earlier for a second reading. And I, at that point, was offended at that shady push through for downtown stuff. And this is a continuation of the downtown model pushed up to College Hill. I'd be okay with strategically fixing the areas that need help, but this says to accomplish that, you're going to do it through form-based code changes like we've done downtown. The reason it stalled out for these last 2 years is because we couldn't get settled what downtown needed to look like. And try as this council might to ask P&Z to consider changes, it failed every single time. I personally believe tonight was the first time we actually supermajority changed anything in the downtown code with a 6-1 to simply say you can't put shared parking on the building. Second time. If it's second time, that's fine. There were over 4 petitions at that point. So I can appreciate the bad timing with it being an election. I can appreciate people that believe this is just a vision plan. I don't believe it is just a vision. A vision is, can you see that beautiful thing on the horizon? This is, walk with me, we're going to get there, and ooh, let me show you some pictures to sell you on the idea. So I think we do need to remove this and then focus in on how we fix C3 and R4.
Other final comments? Anything else? Okay, I'll take the final privilege then as a presiding official. As we take this vote, I ask the council, please keep in consideration the 2 major stakeholders that are here tonight. We had a very lengthy discussion, or plea basically from President Nook at UNI, speaking for the campus, and from Ms. Chrisman at College Hill Partnership. These are not just residents. These are speakers, along with our student representative, of a core constituency that is very carefully affected, or very extremely affected by this decision and by the tone and the stance that the council takes towards College Hill. So with that, it's been motioned and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Four voting aye, 3 voting nay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that does pass through council. We'll be considering a veto in the next several days. With that, going toward item 15, that's Councilmember Sires had brought that forward. That's a resolution approving and authorizing execution of an agreement with Fishbeck relative to a feasibility study for a potential downtown parking facility. And I'll take just a moment to stand easy. If there's anybody who'd like to leave the chambers at this time, you're welcome to. Thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, so for that item, that resolution approving and authorizing execution of agreement with Fishbeck relative to a feasibility study for a downtown parking facility, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Saggers, you brought that forward tonight?
Yes, I did.
Yes, sir.
I don't believe it's necessary for the city to finance or have any part of a parking ramp downtown. I don't think there's a parking problem down there, except for the fact that you do have to walk a ways, and, it's going to restrict the development down there. But to have the city take over the maintenance of a parking ramp is just wrong. They want to have private public partnerships. I'm in disagreement with that. I don't want a parking ramp. And if you went ahead and made Washington Street one way again, you would pick up around 50 to 60 spots between First Street and Sixth Street. So that's why I pulled that.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you very much for those comments. Any others from council? Yes, Councilor Whitver.
Well, I have a question out of curiosity. This is another consultant. On the last parking study that we did, I'm just curious, have we improvised or started all the different suggestions that they had? I know that's not the right word, but
Implemented?
implemented?
So on the last study, they did implement the paid parking up on College Hill. We did put in paid parking downtown, but then you voted to remove that later on.
And was it ever put back in again, or currently there's no paid parking downtown?
No.
So how would people pay, why would people pay to park in a ramp if they don't have to pay to park anywhere else?
If a ramp gets built, the thought process is if you're paying to park in the ramp, the free parking on the streets will also be changed to paid parking. But that, again, is what we would leave that to the recommendation of the company doing the study.
That's kind of the question Simon asked earlier. Thank you.
So, Ms. Brybeck, did that also include the changes for the hours, like who could be in what space when, and the 15-minute lots? Was that part of that study as well?
Yes, so they helped frame up, like with the 2-hour spots, 15-minute spots, 3-hour, 4-hour, all of that was part of that study.
That study, okay, which we implemented. Councilor Hine?
I just have a question. This is an opinion of staff, maybe multiple staff members. Is the old parking study that we have, and I say old, the one we did previously, like 6, 8 years, 2018, is that one usable to figure out and re-implement some of those things and then continue the conversations of a possible garage in the future? Or do we really need to spend the money to do a new study? Are we at that point? Because I don't want to spend the money if we can just use the old parking study because it's not that old. So that would be kind of my question.
So I'll maybe help out, and if Marcy has any more insight, she can add in. But, I think the last study was really about counts. What do we need? So do I think there's things in there that we could implement? Yes. And, I think I'll pick the paid parking. We knew at the time that was probably just a first step. We only did lots because we knew that, okay, it's a starting point for a paid system. And obviously that wasn't successful. There was a lot of people not happy with that, and so council voted to take that away. I think with this new study in the RFP, we really broke it down to 3 phases. The first one was, do we have a need for a ramp? That's the first phase. If we do have a need for a ramp, the second phase is, where would that location be? And then the third phase was, and then what would an overall paid system have to look like for it to all work together? Did I get those right, Marcy? Right. Yeah, those 3 phases. So it is a little bit of a different focus than the last study, I would say.
So along with that, the last ask of the question. So it's a different focus. It kind of ties it all together more and gives us a vision of where we're headed, essentially, and what the ramp would look like. So
Right, so they'll be looking at the current needs and taking into account what we would need in the future as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
Thank you. I was reading through the scope of work here, and I don't know what kind of word I should use. I was kind of impressed by how all-encompassing this really is. It goes way beyond what the previous study did. The previous study seemed to count spots on the street. This is looking at, like you said, do we need one? They might come back and say, no, we don't need one. Where should we put it if they think we need one? And will it suit the needs, how we position it? How do we pay for it? Then I think the fourth component is what sort of parking ramp will we have? Will it be a multi-use, retail on the bottom, office on the second floor on the outsides of it? Will it go multiple blocks with ramps over the streets? There's a lot of things out there that put condos on the top, penthouse, we'll call them penthouses, all kinds of things like that to raise revenue. Should we condo it so that any new businesses coming in, they have to buy so many spots for their wait staff, that sort of thing? I mean, truthfully, I like this idea. I mean, this is kind of a thing that I see, if they do the study correctly and not be coerced by anybody. So who's the, I see here, the group of people, stakeholders. I see elected officials, which is us. I'm assuming we're going to get to interview with the consultants.
Yep, so you'd be able to meet with them.
The consultants appear to have multi-decades of parking ramp experience.
Correct.
So they've seen cities like ours, a small, quaint little community we don't want to ruin.
Absolutely.
And it may not fit. They might say it doesn't fit. So
Correct.
I guess as I see it, I'm listening to what other people are going to say here. I kind of like the idea.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Schultz.
The time frame on those three things, do we need it, where would it be, and how, then paid parking? Any idea how long the decision would take? I mean, to get to that point of, hey, do we need it, sounds like we're going to be in pretty deep. It isn't probably an easy question right out of the chute. So it
So
kind of
this
seems
is
like
a-
we're already set up to, hey, you need it. Or is there discussion that based on what they know already or what you know already?
It's a pretty comprehensive plan that they have put together, a lot of different layers to it. So as far as the timeline, I mean, they're going to give us recommendations on whether we need it or don't need it, and that's going to determine, I feel, the timeline on, in the future, how far in the future are we looking to say they would recommend paid parking all throughout, or they don't. They're going to tell us some of that information.
Thanks.
So just to tag on with what Marcy said,
Yeah.
actually in their proposal by Fishbeck, they had a proposed schedule that they outlined, and I think that's what she kind of meant by a comprehensive thing. And again, because it was different phases, I think the first phase, they talked about hopefully completing something of that in mid-December.
Correct.
And then, again, if there was a need for a parking ramp study, then they talk about doing that site feasibility study that they have outlined. That's like in January and February timeframe. And then at the same time, that's when they'd also be talking about the rate structure as well too. So that's actually that's one of the reasons why we chose Fishbeck is they were kind of clearer on a proposed timeline than some of the other proposers. Is that fair to say, Marcy?
Yes. Yep. And their final report would be like May, June 2024.
Right.
All right, I got a quick question. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought of the question here, but has Fishbeck ever not recommended a parking structure?
I believe so.
I think that's true. Now, I agree. We had that concern last time too, that any parking consultant, you're nervous, like, are they just always going to come back? Well, of course we need a parking ramp because then they can do the next part and all that stuff. But in our committee, I believe that was one of the questions we asked in some of the interviews. Again, maybe.
I can't remember the name of the city, but they actually they decided a parking ramp was not,
Right.
or parking facility was not needed. They focused on redesigning and relaying out some of the existing lots, side streets, on-street parking to gain some spots.
Okay, and I don't mean to impugn
Yeah.
Fishbeck at all, but just curious about.
But yeah, no, they're very, very open about, they're really going to take the community itself and what our needs are and determine if it's really something that's needed or not.
That was kind of my underlying question. He got there more direct.
Yes, Councilor Dewar.
Does the same price cost whether they do just the 5 task or the 8 tasks? The 5th task says that whether we need or don't need one. Task 6 goes in and where they determine which site feasibility. So if they decide you don't need one, does the price go down? Or you have to pay the $100,000 regardless of whether they do all 8 tasks? Because obviously they wouldn't do task 6, 7, and 8 if they come back and don't recommend one.
Well, their, what do I want to say?
Their fee?
Their fee right now includes everything that you see in that scope of work listed. You can see on one of the lines, we noted that it was contingent on a real estate company here. If they would decide that we need to look at different lots or different properties or things like that, that would be decided if we need those uses as needed. Then that money would be added on later. But right now, it's just the fee of that, what they've got on paper.
Right, so they get the total fee regardless of whether they have to do all 8 tasks.
Correct, because they're giving us they're focusing on our needs now and also trying to tell us what we may need in the future.
But is that 100,000 or 39,000?
I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah,
It's
I was-
39,000.
Yeah, 39,000.
Other questions?
We budgeted 100,000.
Correct. That was the budget.
100.
Yes.
Councilor Cruz.
To the point of what looks like 39,343 on page 227, if anybody has it in front of them, there's 10 tasks. There's task 1, task 2, 2A, 3, and each one of them have a dollar amount with them, 4,800, 3,400, and so on. So if they go down through here and they determine we don't need a garage, then is the contract written, Mr. Rogers, so that would terminate on what they do based on the tasks and the dollar amount attached to the task? Because we wouldn't be on the hook for 39,343 if they don't use or do all the tasks, because they're spelled out individually.
I can't tell off the top of my head how the pricing's broken down.
Okay.
But if there's a scope of work with a fee attached to it, they have to satisfy that scope of work to earn that part of the fee.
Sure. So it would appear to me then, if they get through task 5 and they say, no more work, then that's all we pay them for.
Assuming they don't go on to 6 or 7 in some fashion, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, you got to earn your money.
Right.
Yeah.
That free.
If I may, just as a response, in that professional services fees, it does say they propose to provide their consulting services on a lump sum basis. So they want the entirety of it, and here's the breakdown of each of why those are justified. There's not going to be a price discount if they don't do all 8. And to Marcy's point, they're going to do all 8, so we can have some future guidance. But it is only 39,000, not 100.
343.
41, 343, with the land acquisition estimate.
That's maybe.
Yeah.
All right, other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded and requires a roll call vote.
Four voting aye, 3 voting nay, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that does pass on a 4-3. And takes us over to item 22, which is a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a joint funding agreement for water resource investigations with the U.S. Geological Survey for support, operation, and maintenance of the Cedar River Stream Gauge Station. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Harding, you had a question or comment on it?
I just had a question about the date. I'm assuming that we got an extension because I believe the date was October 1st. Can we, is that an issue, or we got it taken care of before and we're just approving, or how does that work?
So the agreement is from October 1st of this year to the following September 30th. So this vote is just administratively taking care of that, approving that agreement.
Did we lose coverage during that time?
No.
And
Fine.
what if we didn't approve it? Then would we still owe them for the previous amount?
If we didn't approve this agreement, then we'd probably have to have a discussion with them on, how we move forward.
Okay. Is it possible for us to get these before the period starts? Because that's happened a couple of times.
Yeah,
now.
it's something I can inquire about,
Okay.
certainly.
It would certainly help. Thanks. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was basically, just want to make sure we try to see these beforehand.
Yeah.
So,
So we're not
not that, I
backdating.
think the service is fantastic. I mean, and we want it. I just would like to see it prior.
Just to be very specific, Mr. Wiki, did we respond to John Nania by phone or email that we weren't going to make it signed
Yeah,
by
he
October
knows.
1st? They're aware?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Other questions, comments about the item? Okay, seeing none, then it's been moved and seconded. It requires roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So that takes us over to bills and claims. Is there a motion to approve bills and
So
claims?
moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded for October 16th. Any council discussion? Any from the public? Okay, moved and seconded, requires a roll call vote.
All voting aye, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And any council updates or announcements tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Sires.
Jay Stoddard with the Sturgis Falls event sent me a piece that he'd like me to read. It's real short, just about a paragraph.
Does any council member object to that?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. It's about the dilemma with Overman Park. He says, competing beer, geez, I don't have my reading glasses. Competing beer events take revenue away from Gateway Park sales and reduces revenue to help support family events in Overman and the parade. If they pay their percentage of the beer revenue, this would take care of the current dilemma. Jay owns countless pieces of equipment used by Sturgis Falls for free. Jay and all Sturgis board members donate their time and are not paid. The city loan, as they said, was paid off a year or two ago. Jay's hope is that the Overman Park events and parade will happen with the help of competing beer events paying 15% of their gross. That's all he had. He said if it came up, he'd like me to read that. So there it is.
Any other announcements tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Ricos.
I'd like to piggyback on what Councilman Sires said. It's my understanding that these events like the parade, Overman Park, Marine Band, Kids Way, they're not very cheap. They're about $32,000 to put them on. So it's important that there's contribution from all the components of this. It's not a free ride. It's not city paid. In fact, as far as I understand, the Sturgis Falls organization, or any of the organizations, they rent the picnic tables, the porta potties. They pay for all these city services. So it's not the city giving this to them. They're giving them the option to use the city facilities, but there's, what's it called, Jennifer, special use permit or something like that it's called. You got to go through hoops and
Public event permit.
public event permit.
Yeah.
So it's just not a giveaway that they can use the city stuff. So thank you.
Now, I just want to verify that Sturgis Falls doesn't do a public event permit because we have an agreement, a contract
Okay.
with them. I just wanted to clarify that.
Isn't that renewed every 3 years or something like that?
The current contract is for a 3-year period. They've been varying years, but you're right, we're right in the middle of a 3-year contract right now with them.
Okay. Other questions or council updates or announcements? Okay, seeing none, any referrals tonight?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Cruz.
As we were speaking earlier on the College Hill Visioning, I'd like to make a referral to their next committee meeting, whichever one is appropriate, to look at the current R4 and C3 zoning areas as how we would want to move forward with visioning for those areas.
So R4C3 referred to the Community Development Committee?
As you see fit.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Open for discussion? Just on whether or not we should have this referral go forward. Anything? Okay, so, oh, please.
Let's put a date on it of next year, and I'll support it.
It looked like Ron had a question or comment.
Mr. Gaines?
My comment was, I was waiting to after the vote just to ask what was the information that you wanted staff to bring forward and be prepared for when we go into those conversations.
Okay, so I'll look at that as part of this referral of whether or not this referral is worth having, is what information you want to have in the referral.
Mr.
Or
Mayor.
in the committee meeting. Yes, Councilor O'Donnell.
I say this a lot. I echo Councilman Harding. I don't want it to appear that I'm not supporting moving forward, but time is money, and I don't want to waste time when I feel that there's a good chance that there could be this conversation happening again in 2024. So,
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Cyrus.
I'd like to see this move forward for the fact that we don't want to let the people of College Hill think that we're letting them down, because that's not our intent.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Cruz.
To the comment about this being a waste, we're building buildings, hopefully, or promoting development that'll last 100 years. So if we spend a little bit more time, get good student housing for the students, it's an investment. It's not an expense. We have money allocated for this purpose. The more discussion we can have with more stakeholders listening, get more involved, the better it is. So it's an investment.
Okay, thank you. So we have that referral read back? The
Referral to review R4 and C3 area and the visioning plan for College Hill.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor. Take a vote on it. All in favor, say aye for the referral.
Aye.
And opposed?
nay.
Okay, so show of hands for aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and nay, 1, 2. Okay, so that does pass to have the referral. Did not set a date, so it'll take a little bit of time to put it
Set
together.
at the next council meeting.
Was it for next council?
Next
meeting?
committee.
It was intended to be, yes.
Intent doesn't matter.
He
It's
did
That's what I
say
said.
what's in
You
there.
can watch the recording if you wish.
Okay, intent is great in your mind. I just want to make sure that's what was
He did
noted.
say it. I heard
Okay.
it.
For the next council meeting.
So
Is that, and that's something you can do for the next council meeting? I guess we'll have to. Okay,
Answer is yes.
I have a question.
we got a couple weeks. Yes.
All right.
Actually, I don't know if we can comment anymore.
All right, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It'll sort itself out in the wash.
3 weeks,
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
We got a little time.
3 weeks.
Looking at any other referrals tonight? Okay, seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody attending tonight.